I was sitting in my living room wrapping my son David's birthday present when I made a decision that would change everything. Inside the cheerful blue paper was a smart baby monitor with a camera. David and his wife Jessica were expecting their first child in 3 months, and I thought it would be the perfect gift. A way to help them feel safe, to watch over my future grandchild. I had no idea that this innocent device would become a window into the most devastating betrayal of my life. My name is Margaret Foster. I'm 68 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I had raised a good man. I believed my family loved me. I believed the polite smiles and the Sunday dinners meant something real. I was wrong about everything. David had always been my pride and joy. After my husband Thomas died 7 years ago from complications of diabetes, David became the man of the family. He'd call me twice a week, visit every Sunday with Jessica, and always made sure I felt included in their lives. Or so I thought. They lived in a beautiful colonial-style house in Riverside, about 20 minutes from my modest bungalow in the older part of town. Thomas and I had helped them with the down payment, nearly $40,000 from our retirement savings. David promised he'd pay us back, but after Thomas died, he told me to forget about it. "Mom, you've done enough for us. Just enjoy your retirement," he'd said with that warm smile I'd trusted since he was born. Jessica had joined our family 5 years ago. She was a real estate agent, ambitious and polished, with perfect blonde hair and a practiced smile. I tried to love her like a daughter. I really did. But there was always something cold beneath her surface, something calculating in the way she looked at our family photos, as if she were appraising property rather than memories. Still, she made David happy, and that was enough for me. Or I convinced myself it was enough. The baby news had come 2 months ago. They'd invited me to dinner and announced it with a little onesie that said, "Grandma's Little Miracle." I cried with joy. My first grandchild. A new generation. A second chance to be part of something beautiful after so much loss. I immediately started planning. I cleaned out the guest room to make space for baby supplies. I bought knitting supplies to make blankets. I researched the best baby monitors because I wanted to give them something truly useful. That's when I found the BabySafe Pro 3000. It had excellent reviews, crystal clear video, two-way audio, and even night vision. It cost me $300, nearly a week's worth of my pension, but I didn't care. This was for my grandchild. This was for my family. David's birthday was on a Saturday. I arrived at their house at noon with the wrapped present, a homemade lemon cake, his favorite since childhood, and a card with a $100 bill inside. I'd learned long ago to give cash instead of gifts because Jessica would always return whatever I bought for store credit. But the baby monitor, I was sure she couldn't return this. It was practical. It was necessary. Jessica opened the door wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a perfect messy bun. "Margaret, you're early," she said, not moving from the doorway. Not "Hi, Mom," or "Come in." Just a statement of fact with a hint of annoyance. "I wanted to help set up for the party," I replied, holding up the cake carrier. She glanced at the cake, then at me. "We're actually keeping it small this year. Just us. We're tired from all the pregnancy preparations. Small. Just them." I felt the first small crack in my heart, but I pushed it aside. "Oh, of course. You need your rest. I'll just drop this off and head home." David appeared behind her, his face brightening when he saw me. "Mom, you didn't have to come so early. Come in, come in." He pulled the door wider, shooting Jessica a look I couldn't quite read. Inside, their house was immaculate as always. White furniture, gray accents, everything looking like a page from a design magazine. There were no photos of me and Thomas. I'd noticed that before but never said anything. The only family photos were of Jessica's parents, prominently displayed above the fireplace. I set the cake on their marble kitchen counter and handed David the present. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. This is for the baby, really. I know you two will want to keep a close eye on the little one." David unwrapped it with genuine enthusiasm. "A baby monitor. Mom, this is perfect. Look, Jess, it even has a smartphone app." Jessica took the box from his hands, examining it with her real estate agent's critical eye. "It's nice, Margaret. We were actually planning to get the Nest Cam system, but this will work for now." For now. Everything I gave was always for now with Jessica. I stayed for exactly 37 minutes. I know because I kept checking my watch, waiting for some sign that they actually wanted me there. We had coffee. We made small talk about the pregnancy. Jessica complained about morning sickness and swollen ankles. David talked about a promotion at his accounting firm. I smiled and nodded and pretended not to notice that they kept glancing at each other, as if communicating in a silent language I wasn't meant to understand. When I stood to leave, David hugged me tight. "Thanks for the gift, Mom. And for the cake. You're the best." Those words should have warmed me. Instead, they felt like a polite dismissal. I drove home with tears in my eyes, though I couldn't explain why. Nothing terrible had happened. They'd been civil, even kind. But something felt wrong. Something felt like goodbye. 3 days later, David called me. "Mom, we set up the baby monitor in the nursery. It works great. Thanks again." "I'm so glad, honey. Can I see the nursery sometime?" A pause. "Sure, yeah. We'll have you over soon. Things are just really busy right now." Busy. Always busy. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that pause, about Jessica's cold politeness, about the way they'd looked at each other. At 2 a.m, I did something I'm not proud of. I opened my laptop and downloaded the BabySafe Pro app. The monitor came with a family sharing feature. I was listed as grandma in the setup, which meant I had access to the camera feed. I told myself I just wanted to see the nursery they'd been working on. I told myself it was innocent curiosity. I told myself I wasn't spying on my own son. The app opened. The camera feed loaded. And there in perfect clarity was the nursery. Soft yellow walls. A white crib. A rocking chair in the corner. It was beautiful. Empty but beautiful. I was about to close the app when I heard voices. The camera had a sensitive microphone. David and Jessica had just walked into the room, unaware they were being recorded. "We should probably move this thing," Jessica was saying. "Your mother's going to want to check on the baby constantly." David laughed. "She means well. And the app has privacy settings. We can turn it off whenever we want." "I know, but still. She's already so clingy. Can you imagine when the baby actually arrives?" "Clingy." She called me clingy. I should have closed the app. I should have respected their privacy. But I was frozen, my hand hovering over the laptop, unable to move. "She's just lonely since Dad died," David said, his voice gentle. Defensive of me, at least. "I get that," Jessica replied, her tone softening slightly. "But David, we need to talk about boundaries. Your mother still thinks she has a say in our lives. The money she gave us for the house, she brings it up constantly." "She does not," David protested weakly. "She does. Every time we make a decision she doesn't like, she mentions how she helped us get started. It's manipulative." I gasped aloud, though no one could hear me. I had never, not once, thrown that money in their faces. I'd given it freely, with love. "Look," Jessica continued. "I know this sounds harsh, but we need to think about our future. Your mother isn't getting any younger. She's got that house in the old neighborhood, probably worth $200,000 at least. And she's still working part-time at the library." "Why?" "She likes working," David said, but his voice had changed. Less defensive now. More thoughtful. "She likes working because she has nothing else. No friends, no hobbies, just waiting for us to need her. David, when she passes, everything she has goes to you. To us. We could use that money for the baby's college fund. For our future kids. But if she keeps spending it on random gifts and charity donations, there won't be anything left." The room spun. I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. They were talking about me like I was already dead. Like I was an asset to be managed. "Jess, that's pretty cold," David said, but he didn't sound angry. He sounded like he was considering it. "I'm being practical. Look, I'm not saying we don't take care of her. We invite her to Sunday dinners. We call her. We're good to her. But we can't let her drain our resources while we're trying to build something. My parents already told me they're not leaving us anything. Everything's going to my brother. Your mother is our retirement plan, whether you want to admit it or not." Silence. Long, horrible silence. "You're right," David finally said. "We need to be smart about this." Those 4 words killed something inside me. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd stayed up with through nightmares and sickness and heartbreak, had just agreed that I was an investment to be managed. "Good," Jessica said briskly. "Now about the nursing home issue." "Nursing home?" "My friend Kara's mother-in-law just moved into Sunset Gardens. It's actually really nice. Full care activities, all meals included. About $4,000 a month. Mom would never agree to that, David said. She loves her house. She loves her house because it's all she knows. But David, think about it. She's 68. How much longer can she maintain that place? The roof needs work. The plumbing is ancient. One fall, one accident, and she'll need full-time care anyway. If we move her into assisted living now, while she's still relatively healthy, we can sell the house and invest that money. By the time the baby's ready for college, we'd have a substantial nest egg. And what do we tell her? David asked. We tell her the truth. That we're worried about her safety. That we want her close by so we can visit more often. Sunset Gardens is only 15 minutes from here. We spin it as concern, not convenience. Spin it. Like I was a business deal. I don't know, Jess. She's pretty sharp. She'll see through it. Then we wait for an opening. She's already working less at the library. She complains about being tired. We use that. We plant seeds. Mom, you look exhausted. Are you sure you should be living alone? What if something happens? Make her think it's her idea. I closed the laptop so hard I nearly cracked the screen. My hands were shaking. My breath came in short, painful gasps. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son, my David, plotting to put me in a home and sell my house out from under me. But it was real. I'd heard every word. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. I called in sick to the library, something I'd never done in 12 years of working there. I sat in Thomas's old armchair, the one I'd kept even though the fabric was worn, and I tried to process what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to call David and scream, and cry and demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had survived Thomas's death and the loneliness that followed, told me to wait, to watch, to gather information. So I opened the app again. For the next 2 weeks, I listened to my son and daughter-in-law's private conversations. I learned that Jessica had already contacted a real estate agent, her colleague, to get a valuation on my house. I learned that they'd calculated my life expectancy at another 15 years and considered it a long time to wait. I learned that they'd discussed my will, which left everything to David, and wondered if they could encourage me to set up a trust that would give them access to funds while I was still alive. I learned that they called me the Margaret problem when they thought no one was listening. I also learned smaller, more painful details. Jessica complained that I wore old lady perfume that lingered in their house after I visited. David laughed and agreed. They mocked the way I talked about Thomas, saying I was stuck in the past. Jessica had saved screenshots of my Facebook posts to show her friends, making fun of my spelling errors and outdated references. They'd nicknamed me Helicopter Margaret because I texted David too often, asking about his day. Every conversation was another knife in my heart. But I didn't cry anymore. I didn't break down. Instead, I got angry. A cold, quiet anger that cleared my mind and sharpened my focus. If they wanted to treat me like a problem to be solved, I'd give them a problem they couldn't solve. I started with research. I called my friend Patricia, who'd been a paralegal for 40 years before retiring. Patricia, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to protect their assets from family members, what would they do? Patricia, bless her, didn't ask questions. She gave me the name of an estate planning attorney. Linda Marsh. She's the best. Tell her I sent you. Linda Marsh's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I sat across from her desk and told her everything. Not the hidden camera part, I wasn't proud of that, but the gist of what I'd overheard. Linda listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. Mrs. Foster, I'm very sorry you're going through this. Unfortunately, your situation isn't uncommon. Adult children viewing elderly parents as financial assets rather than people is a growing problem. What can I do? I asked. Several things. First, we can set up an irrevocable trust. You transfer your assets into the trust, which means legally, you no longer own them. The trust owns them. You can name yourself as the primary beneficiary during your lifetime, which means you still have access to everything, but upon your death, the assets go wherever you specify. Your son wouldn't be able to contest it because he'd have no legal claim. I like the sound of that, I said. Second, we can establish a durable power of attorney for healthcare and finances. You choose someone you trust, not your son, to make decisions if you become incapacitated. This prevents your son or daughter-in-law from petitioning the court for guardianship. I have a cousin in Oregon, Martha. We've been close for years. Perfect. Third, we sell your house now, while you're healthy and competent. You buy something smaller, more manageable, maybe a nice condo. You take the equity and invest it in the trust. This removes their primary target. I felt a weight lifting. How long will this take? If you're serious, we can have the basic documents ready in a week. The house sale will take longer, but we can start the process immediately. I'm serious, I said. More serious than I've ever been about anything. Over the next month, I worked with Linda to dismantle everything David and Jessica had been counting on. We set up the irrevocable trust with Martha as co-trustee. We transferred my bank accounts, my small investment portfolio, and eventually the deed to my house into the trust. But I didn't stop there. I also made some other strategic decisions that Linda helped me implement. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and slowly transferred my pension deposits there. I changed my will to leave the bulk of my estate to various charities, with only a small symbolic amount for David, enough to show I hadn't forgotten him, but not enough to retire on. I set up automatic donations to causes Thomas and I had cared about, the local animal shelter, the library literacy program, and a scholarship fund at our community college. Every time I signed another document, I felt stronger, more in control. These weren't just legal protections. They were declarations of my worth, my autonomy, my right to live my final decades on my own terms. I listed my house with a different real estate agency, not Jessica's firm, and accepted an offer within 2 weeks. The buyer was a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the garden Thomas had planted. I cried when I signed the papers, but they were good tears. Cleansing tears. The house where I'd raised David, where Thomas and I had built 42 years of memories, where I'd imagined my grandchildren would visit, was gone. But it was my choice. My decision. Not theirs. I bought a small 2-bedroom condo in a 55-plus community called Heritage Hills. It had security, a community center, a pool, and most importantly, it was 35 miles away from David and Jessica. Far enough to make casual drop-ins inconvenient. Far enough that they couldn't just stop by to check on me or, more accurately, to check on their investment. Through all of this, I kept listening to the baby monitor. I heard Jessica's frustration when her real estate colleague told her my house had sold. How did she even manage that? She's practically senile. I heard David's confusion. Maybe she's more capable than we thought. I heard them argue about whether to confront me about moving without telling them. We can't seem too interested in her money, Jessica hissed. It'll look suspicious. One evening, about 3 weeks after I'd moved into my condo, I heard a conversation that made my blood run cold. We need a new strategy, Jessica was saying. They were in the kitchen, the baby monitor picking up their voices clearly. Your mother has obviously figured out we were planning something. She's put up walls. I still can't believe she moved without telling us, David said. That's not like her. It's exactly like someone who's hiding something. David, I think we need to consider that your mother might be showing early signs of dementia. The sudden move, the secretiveness, the way she's been distant lately. Mom's not senile, David protested. She's sharp as ever. Is she? Think about it. She's been forgetting things. Remember last month when she called you twice in one day asking the same question about the baby's due date? I hadn't forgotten. I'd called twice because David hadn't answered the first time, and I'd been worried. And she's been making odd financial decisions, Jessica continued. Selling the house so quickly, moving to a place she didn't even let us see first. These are warning signs, David. If we can document these behaviors, we might have grounds to petition for guardianship. My heart stopped. Guardianship. Legal control over my life, my finances, my decisions. That seems extreme, David said, but his voice was uncertain. It's protective. We'd be protecting her from herself. And honestly, David, if she's going to make irrational decisions with money that should be securing our family's future, we have a responsibility to step in. I don't know, Jess. That feels like we'd be crossing a line. We've already crossed lines. We've been planning for her future for months. This is just making it official. And think about Emma. Don't you want to make sure your mother's assets are preserved for your daughter's future? I sat in my dark condo, listening to them plot my legal incapacitation, and felt something inside me harden. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my freedom, my agency, my right to exist as a competent human being. The next morning, I called Linda Marsh. They're talking about pursuing guardianship, claiming I have dementia. Linda's response was immediate. We need to act now. I'm going to refer you to a colleague who specializes in elder law and guardianship defense. Her name is Carol Bennett. She's a fighter, and you're going to need one. Carol Bennett was younger than Linda, maybe 40, with fierce eyes and a handshake that could crack walnuts. When I met her in her office that afternoon, she listened to my story with increasing outrage. Mrs. Foster, what your son and daughter-in-law are discussing is a form of elder abuse. If they pursue guardianship under false pretenses, it's also fraud. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. How? I asked. First, we're going to get you a full cognitive assessment from a neuropsychologist. Dr. Sarah Kim is one of the best in the state. She'll do comprehensive testing to document that you're of sound mind. Second, we're going to get affidavits from people who interact with you regularly, your employer at the library, your neighbors, your doctor. We'll create an undeniable record of your mental competence. And if they still try? I asked. Then we fight them in court. And Mrs. Foster, I promise you we will win. Over the next 2 weeks, I underwent the most thorough examination of my mind I'd ever experienced. Dr. Kim tested my memory, my reasoning, my ability to manage finances, my understanding of current events. She asked me to solve problems, remember word lists, draw clocks, and explain complex concepts. When the results came back, Dr. Kim smiled. Mrs. Foster, your cognitive function is not only normal for your age, it's above average. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sound. There is absolutely no evidence of dementia or any other cognitive impairment. I actually laughed with relief. Can you put that in writing? Already done. I've prepared a detailed report that will hold up in any court proceeding. Armed with Dr. Kim's report, affidavits from my supervisor at the library, my primary care physician, 3 neighbors from Heritage Hills, and the complete documentation of my financial decisions, Carol filed what she called a preemptive strike. She petitioned the court for a declaration of competency, essentially asking a judge to officially confirm that I was of sound mind and that any future guardianship attempts would be groundless. It was an unusual move, but Carol said it would create a legal barrier that David and Jessica would have trouble overcoming. On moving day, I called David. Honey, I have some news. I've sold the house and bought a condo. I'm moving today. Silence. Then, what? Mom, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped. It all happened very quickly, I said, keeping my voice light. The condo is perfect for me. Much easier to maintain. You and Jessica have enough on your plate with the baby coming. Where is it? He asked, his tone tight. Heritage Hills. It's a lovely community. I'll have you over once I'm settled. Heritage Hills? Mom, that's an hour away in traffic. 35 miles, I corrected. Very peaceful. I'm looking forward to the change. Another silence. I could almost hear him calculating what this meant for their plans. Well, he said finally, if it makes you happy, that's what matters. Send me the address. I never did send him the address. 2 weeks after I moved, I received a formal letter at my new address. David and Jessica's attorney was requesting a meeting to discuss concerns about Mrs. Margaret Foster's recent behavioral changes and financial decisions. The letter was full of legal language, but the meaning was clear. They were moving forward with their guardianship plan. Carol Bennett smiled when I showed her the letter. Perfect. They just gave us exactly what we need. The meeting was scheduled for a Monday afternoon at their attorney's office. Carol advised me on what to wear, a simple but professional outfit, how to behave calm and composed, and what to expect. They're going to try to paint you as confused, forgetful, maybe even paranoid, Carol said. They'll ask leading questions. Try to get you flustered. Don't let them. Answer clearly and concisely. And remember, you have nothing to hide. I walked into that conference room with my head high. David and Jessica sat on one side of the table with their attorney, a middle-aged man with expensive cufflinks and a practiced sympathetic expression. Carol and I sat on the other side. Mrs. Foster, their attorney began, I'm Robert Chambers. We're here today because your son and daughter-in-law are concerned about you. They love you very much and want to make sure you're safe and well cared for. I appreciate their concern, I said calmly. But I can assure you, I'm perfectly capable of caring for myself. Of course, of course. But there have been some recent changes in your behavior that have worried them. For instance, you sold your home very suddenly, without consulting your family. Can you explain that decision? I sold my home because it was becoming too much to maintain. The yard work, the repairs, the upkeep. I decided to downsize to a condo where those responsibilities are handled by the community association. It was a practical decision based on my current needs. But you didn't discuss this with David and Jessica first? I'm 68 years old, Mr. Chambers. I don't need permission from my son to make decisions about my own property. Jessica leaned forward. Margaret, we're not saying you need permission. We're just concerned that you made such a big decision so quickly. It's not like you. People change, Jessica. Circumstances change. I'm adapting to my life as it is now, not as it was when Thomas was alive. Speaking of Thomas, Mr. Chambers said, consulting his notes, your husband passed away 7 years ago, is that correct? Yes. And you've mentioned him frequently in conversations with David and Jessica. Do you ever forget that he's passed? I saw where this was going. No, Mr. Chambers. I'm well aware my husband is dead. I mention him because we were married for 42 years. He's a part of my history. Talking about him doesn't mean I'm confused about his status. Carol interjected. Mr. Chambers, where exactly is this line of questioning going? Mrs. Foster is here voluntarily to address her family's concerns. She's not on trial. Of course not, Mr. Chambers said smoothly. We're simply trying to understand Mrs. Foster's state of mind. Now, Mrs. Foster, can you tell me what today's date is? October 15th, 2024. It's a Monday. We're in downtown Portland at your offices on the 12th floor. Would you like me to name the current president? Or perhaps explain the theory of relativity? A flicker of annoyance crossed Mr. Chambers' face. That won't be necessary. Can you explain your recent financial decisions? Certainly. I established an irrevocable trust to protect my assets and ensure they're distributed according to my wishes. I set up a durable power of attorney with my cousin Martha, who I've known and trusted for 60 years. I diversified my charitable giving to causes that matter to me. All of these decisions were made with the guidance of experienced attorneys and financial advisors. And you didn't think to include David in these decisions? David is included. He's aware of my general plans. What he's not included in is the day-to-day management of my assets, because they're mine to manage. Jessica's voice had an edge now. Margaret, we're trying to help you. Why are you being so defensive? I looked at her directly. Jessica, I'm not being defensive. I'm being clear. My cognitive function has been tested by Dr. Sarah Kim, a neuropsychologist. The results show I'm of sound mind. My financial decisions have been reviewed by qualified professionals and found to be appropriate. My living situation is safe and comfortable. There is no basis for your concerns. We just want what's best for you, David said, speaking for the first time. His voice was sad, almost pleading. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd thought I knew. David, what's best for me is to live independently, make my own decisions, and be treated with respect. If you genuinely care about my well-being, you'll accept that. The meeting ended shortly after. Mr. Chambers said he'd review the situation and be in touch. Carol and I left together, and once we were outside, she gave me a high five. You were perfect, she said. Calm, articulate, completely in control. They have nothing. She was right. 2 weeks later, we received a letter from Mr. Chambers stating that after reviewing the matter, David and Jessica had decided not to pursue guardianship proceedings. The baby arrived 6 weeks later. A beautiful little girl they named Emma. David called me from the hospital, his voice full of genuine joy and exhaustion. Mom, she's perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes. Jessica did amazing. I'm so happy for you both, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I was happy for the baby. Emma deserved better than parents who viewed family as a financial transaction. We'll bring her by once we're home and settled, David promised. Whenever you're ready, I replied. No rush. But weeks passed. Then a month. David sent photos via text, generic shots that could have been anyone's baby. Jessica posted heavily filtered images on social media, but didn't tag me. I wasn't invited to the house. I wasn't asked to babysit. The Sunday dinners stopped. The twice-weekly phone calls dwindled to once every 2 weeks, then once a month. I wasn't needed anymore because I'd removed myself from their financial future. I could have been devastated. Instead, I focused on building a new life. I joined the book club at Heritage Hills, where we read everything from literary fiction to thriller novels. I discovered I had strong opinions about character development and enjoyed the lively debates. I took up watercolor painting at the community center. My first attempts were terrible, muddy colors and awkward compositions, but I got better. There was something therapeutic about watching colors blend on paper, about creating something beautiful from nothing. I volunteered at the local animal shelter, walking dogs and socializing cats. There was a black cat named Shadow who'd been there for months because he was old and grumpy. I visited him every Tuesday and Thursday. We understood each other, two seniors who'd been overlooked and underestimated. After 3 months, I adopted him. Shadow now sleeps on my bed every night, purring like a motorboat. I made friends with my neighbors, women like me who'd lived full lives and weren't ready to be put on a shelf. There was Ruth, a former high school principal with a wicked sense of humor. Betty, who'd been a nurse for 40 years and had stories that could curl your hair. And Dorothy, a widow like me, who'd lost her husband to cancer and understood the particular loneliness of waking up alone after decades of partnership. We had coffee together every morning in the community room. We watched movies on Friday nights. We celebrated birthdays and holidays. We became the family we'd all needed. One afternoon, 3 months after Emma's birth, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find David standing there, holding Emma in a carrier. "Mom," he said, and his eyes were red. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. He came in, looking around my small, cheerful condo with something like surprise. Shadow eyed him suspiciously from the couch. "This is nice, Mom. Really nice. You got a cat?" "I did. His name is Shadow. Would you like coffee?" "Please." I made coffee while he got Emma settled in her carrier on my couch. She was awake, staring at the world with those unfocused newborn eyes. Beautiful. David sat at my small kitchen table and wrapped his hands around the coffee mug. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "All right. Did you hear us? That day with the baby monitor?" My heart stopped, but I kept my face calm. "What do you mean?" "The app. The family sharing feature. Jessica told me we should check who had access, and your name was there." "Mom, did you listen to us?" I could have lied. I should have lied. But I was so tired of lies. "Yes," I said simply. "I did." He closed his eyes. "How much?" "Enough." "Oh God." He put his head in his hands. "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth, David. Did you mean what you said? About me being your retirement plan? About putting me in a home?" He was quiet for a long time. When he finally looked up, there were tears on his face. "I don't know." In that moment, with Jessica talking about security and the future and being practical, it made sense. "But Mom, hearing you say it back to me now, it sounds monstrous." "It is monstrous." "Yes," I agreed. "It is. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't. But somewhere along the way, Jessica and we started viewing everything as transactions. The house, the baby, even you. We lost sight of what actually matters." "What actually matters?" I prompted. "People. Family. Not because of what they can give us, but because we love them." He wiped his eyes. "I love you, Mom. Not your house or your money. You. And I'm so ashamed that I let Jessica convince me otherwise. I'm ashamed that I convinced myself otherwise." I reached across the table and took his hand. "David, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I've set up my affairs so that no one can take advantage of me. My assets are in a trust. My house is sold. Everything is protected. Not because I don't love you, but because I need to protect myself. Can you understand that?" He nodded, squeezing my hand. "I understand. And you were right to do it. Mom, I don't want your money. I never should have wanted it. I just want you in Emma's life. In my life." "What about Jessica?" I asked quietly. He sighed. "Jessica and I have a lot to work on. She grew up in a family where everything was about status and money. Her parents pitted her and her brother against each other their whole lives. She doesn't know how to have relationships that aren't transactional. But that's not an excuse. I chose to marry her. I chose to go along with her plans. That's on me. Are you going to tell her you came here?" "Yes. And I'm going to tell her that things have to change. If she can't accept you as my mother, as Emma's grandmother, without calculation and schemes, then we have bigger problems than money. Emma started to fuss. David picked her up, holding her with the careful uncertainty of a new parent. "Want to hold her?" he asked as I took my granddaughter in my arms. She was warm and small and perfect. She smelled like baby lotion and possibility. "Hi, Emma," I whispered. "I'm your grandma, and I'm going to make sure you grow up knowing that people are more valuable than things." David stayed for 2 hours. We talked about everything, the hurt I'd felt, the pressure he'd been under, the kind of parents we both wanted to be. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't instant forgiveness. But it was a start. As he was leaving, he turned to me. "Mom, would you be willing to babysit sometimes? Not because we need free childcare, but because I want Emma to know you." "I'd love that," I said. "On my terms, though. I'm not going to be taken for granted again." "Never," he promised. "Never again." After he left, I sat on my small balcony and watched the sunset. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "How did the move go? Are you settling in?" I smiled and typed back. "Settling in perfectly. Starting over at 68. Best decision I ever made." And it was. I'd lost the son I thought I had, but I'd found something more valuable. I'd found myself. My strength. My worth beyond what I could provide to others. 3 weeks later, David called. "Mom, Jessica wants to apologize. In person. Would you be willing to meet for coffee?" I thought about it. Neutral territory. That cafe by the bookstore downtown. Next Tuesday at 2. Tuesday came. I arrived early, ordered my coffee, and waited. Jessica walked in exactly on time, looking less polished than usual. No perfect hair. No designer bag. Just a tired woman in jeans and a sweater. She sat down across from me. "Margaret, thank you for meeting me." "Jessica, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not because David made me, but because I was wrong. Completely, horribly wrong." She took a breath. "I grew up believing that security came from money and strategy. My parents taught me to always have a plan, to never rely on emotions, to protect myself first. When I married David, I saw your closeness as a threat, not a gift. I saw your generosity as manipulation, not love. And I convinced him to see it that way too." "Why?" I asked. "What did I ever do to you?" "Nothing. That's the worst part. You were kind to me. You welcomed me. You tried to connect. And I repaid that by plotting against you." She looked down at her hands. "My therapist says I have a scarcity mindset. I'm always afraid there won't be enough, so I try to control and scheme and protect. But in the process, I destroy the very things that would actually make me secure. Like family. Like trust." "Are you in therapy?" I asked, surprised. "Started 3 weeks ago. After David told me he'd visited you and you'd heard everything. I realized I had a choice. Keep being the person who'd plotted to put her mother-in-law in a home, or change. I'm trying to change, Margaret. I really am." I studied her. She looked sincere. Vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "Jessica, I appreciate this apology. I do. But words are easy. What matters is what comes next. I know. I'm not asking for instant forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I can be better. For Emma's sake, if nothing else. She deserves a grandmother. You deserve to be her grandmother." We talked for an hour. It was awkward and honest and painful. But by the end, something had shifted. Not trust. Not yet. But possibility. "Can we try again?" Jessica asked as we stood to leave. Slowly, I agreed. "On one condition. You never, ever talk about me like I'm a problem to be solved. I'm a person. Treat me like one. Deal." That was 6 months ago. Things changed gradually after that day. David started visiting every Sunday again, this time bringing Emma. Jessica came too, though she was quieter than before, more thoughtful. She'd ask me questions about my life at Heritage Hills, about my watercolor classes, about shadow. Real questions, not polite small talk. I learned that Jessica's childhood had been even worse than David had described. Her father had been a successful businessman who measured love in dollar signs. Her mother had been cold and distant, more concerned with appearances than emotions. Jessica's brother had been the golden child, the heir apparent, while Jessica had been told from a young age that she needed to marry well because she wouldn't inherit anything. Understanding her past didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me see her as a wounded person rather than a monster. We were both products of our experiences, trying to navigate a world that had taught us painful lessons. One Sunday afternoon, about 4 months after our coffee shop meeting, Jessica arrived alone. David had stayed home with Emma, who had a slight cold. "Margaret," she said, standing awkwardly in my doorway, "I was wondering if you'd like some company. I brought ingredients for lemon cake. David told me it's his favorite, and I thought maybe you could teach me how to make it." I was surprised. Jessica had never expressed interest in cooking before. She was a takeout and restaurant person, too busy with her real estate career to spend time in the kitchen. "I'd like that," I said. We spent the afternoon in my small kitchen, measuring flour and cracking eggs. I showed her how to zest the lemons properly, how to fold in the ingredients without overmixing, how to test the cake for doneness. "My mother never taught me to cook," Jessica said as we waited for the cake to cool. "She said it was a waste of time when you could pay someone else to do it. But watching you with Emma, the way you talk about making things for David when he was little, I realize I missed out on something important." "It's never too late to learn," I said gently. "That's what my therapist says. About a lot of things." She looked at me. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you do it? After Thomas died, after you were alone, how did you keep going?" I thought about the question. I stopped waiting for someone else to make my life meaningful. I started creating meaning for myself. The library job, the volunteering, the friendships. I built a life that was mine, not just an extension of being someone's wife or mother. Jessica nodded slowly. "I think that's what I need to do. I've spent my whole life either trying to please my parents or trying to secure my future. I don't know who I am outside of those roles." "Then it's time to find out," I said. Over the next few months, I watched Jessica slowly transform. She cut back her hours at work. She started seeing Emma not as a project, but as a person. She joined a book club, different from mine but similar in spirit. She started seeing a nutritionist because she realized she'd been stress eating for years and wanted to address the underlying issues. One evening, David called me with exciting news. "Mom, Jessica and I have been talking. We want to do something for you. A real apology, not just words." "David, you don't need to." "Please let me finish. You spent $40,000 on our house down payment. We can't pay that back now, but we've set up a college fund for Emma in your name. We're contributing $500 a month. It's not about the money. It's about showing Emma, when she's old enough to understand, that her grandmother is someone we honor and respect." I felt tears prickling my eyes. "David, that's beautiful. And Mom, there's something else. Jessica wants to sell our house." "What? Why?" "Because it's too big, too expensive, and honestly, it's filled with bad memories. We're looking at a smaller place, something we can actually afford on our own. We want to start fresh, build something that's really ours, not funded by your sacrifice." "I'm proud of you both," I said, and I meant it. The holidays that year were different. I hosted Thanksgiving at my small condo. Ruth, Betty, and Dorothy joined us, along with David, Jessica, and Emma. The condo was crowded, the turkey was slightly dry, and Shadow knocked over a glass of wine. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely perfect. Jessica helped me in the kitchen, actually helped rather than hovering uselessly. She'd been practicing her cooking and surprised everyone with a homemade pumpkin pie. "This is delicious," Ruth said, taking a second slice. "Jessica, you have real talent." Jessica blushed with genuine pleasure. "Margaret's been teaching me. I'm still learning." After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Jessica pulled me aside. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. I've been going through my files, and I found the valuation my colleague did on your old house. The one I ordered when we were planning to pressure you into moving. I destroyed it. I also called my friend Kara, the one who recommended Sunset Gardens, and told her what we'd been planning. I wanted to own up to it, to acknowledge how wrong it was." "What did she say?" I asked. She was horrified. She said if we'd actually gone through with it, she would have reported us for elder abuse. It made me realize how close we came to doing something unforgivable. "But you didn't do it," I said. "You're making different choices now. Because you gave me the chance to. You could have cut us off completely. You could have told Emma when she's older what we tried to do. But you're giving us the opportunity to be better people. That's what love does," I said simply. Real love, anyway. Christmas morning, I woke up in my cozy condo with Shadow curled beside me. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching snow fall gently outside. My phone buzzed with messages. Ruth sending a funny meme about aging. Betty asking if I wanted to join the early morning walk group she'd started. Dorothy inviting me to New Year's Eve dinner. And David, "Merry Christmas, Mom. Emma's first Christmas. We'll be over at 10. Can't wait to see you." At 10 sharp they arrived. Emma was 6 months old now, big enough to sit up and grab at everything. She was wearing a red velvet dress that Jessica had bought, and her eyes went wide when she saw Shadow. We spent the morning opening presents. I'd knitted a blanket for Emma, soft yellow yarn with her name embroidered in the corner. For David, I'd framed a photo of him and Thomas from when David was 10, both of them covered in dirt from building a treehouse. For Jessica, I'd given her my grandmother's recipe book, handwritten and stained with decades of use. Jessica held the book like it was made of glass. "Margaret, I can't accept this. It's a family heirloom." "Your family," I said simply. "And Emma should learn these recipes from her mother, like I learned them from my grandmother." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She hugged me, a real hug, not the stiff obligatory embraces of the past. David gave me a gift that made me laugh and cry at the same time. It was a photo album, professionally made, titled The Life and Times of Margaret Foster. Inside were photos I'd never seen before, pictures David had collected from relatives, from my library colleagues, from my Heritage Hills friends. There was a section for each decade of my life. The final pages were blank. "For the memories still to come," David said. "Mom, your story isn't over. This is just the beginning of a new chapter." He was right. At 68, I wasn't ending my life. I was starting a new one. That afternoon after they'd left, I sat with Shadow and looked through the album. There I was as a young woman in San Diego, laughing on the beach. There I was on my wedding day, Thomas looking at me like I'd hung the moon. There I was holding newborn David, exhausted and glowing. There I was at my library desk, surrounded by books. There I was at Heritage Hills, painting with my watercolor class. A life in pictures. Full and rich and complicated. The baby monitor app was still on my phone. I opened it one last time. The camera showed Emma's empty nursery, peaceful and quiet. I watched for a moment, then deleted the app. I didn't need to spy anymore. I didn't need to protect myself from hidden threats. I'd built walls when I needed them, and now I was carefully, cautiously taking them down. Not all the way. I wasn't naive. The trust remained in place. Martha was still my power of attorney. My will still left the bulk of my estate to charity. These protections weren't about punishing David and Jessica. They were about respecting myself. But I was open to relationship again. Open to love, messy and complicated and real. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I'd started doing after moving to Heritage Hills. My therapist, yes, I'd started seeing one too, had recommended it. "Today was a good day," I wrote. Emma smiled at Shadow. Jessica made roast beef that was only slightly overdone. David helped me set up my new tablet and taught me how to video call. Ruth told an inappropriate joke that made me laugh until I cried. This is what happiness looks like at 68. Not perfect. Not what I imagined. But real. I thought about the Margaret who'd sat alone in her old house, listening to her son plot against her through a baby monitor. That Margaret had been devastated, broken, certain her life was over. But that Margaret had also been strong enough to protect herself. Smart enough to plan ahead. Brave enough to start over. I'd learned that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning. The painful push that forces you to stand up and walk toward something better. I'd learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who see you, who value you for who you are rather than what you can provide. Ruth, Betty, and Dorothy were as much my family now as David and Emma. I'd learned that it's never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose yourself. And I'd learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the poison so it doesn't consume you. It means giving people room to grow while protecting your own space. The hidden camera had revealed the worst in the people I loved. But it had also revealed the best in me, the strength I didn't know I had, the courage to rebuild, the wisdom to protect myself while remaining open to connection. As I closed my journal and got ready for bed, Shadow jumped up beside me, purring his gravelly purr. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. A fresh start. A clean slate. I'd survived betrayal. I'd survived loneliness. I'd survived the death of the family I thought I had. And I'd built something new. Something real. Something mine. At 68 years old, I was finally truly living. Not for my son, not for my husband's memory, not for anyone else's expectations. For myself. And it felt like freedom. A year passed. Then another. Emma learned to walk, then to talk. Her first clear word was Gamma. Close enough to Grandma that it made my heart soar. I saw her every week, sometimes at their new modest house, sometimes at my condo where she loved chasing Shadow around. David got a promotion at work, but turned down the one after that because it would have required too much travel. I don't want to miss time with Emma, he explained. Or with you, Mom. I miss too much already. Jessica left her real estate firm and started working for a nonprofit that built affordable housing. The pay was less, but she came home energized rather than exhausted. I'm finally doing something that matters, she told me. Not just making money, but making a difference. My own life continued to expand. I took a creative writing class and started writing a memoir. My watercolors improved enough that I sold one at the Heritage Hills Art Show. I fostered 3 more cats from the shelter before deciding Shadow was enough feline company for one person. I dated briefly, a widower named Frank who I met at the book club. It didn't work out romantically, we were too set in our ways, but we became good friends. He introduced me to jazz music. I introduced him to Thai food. We went to concerts together and complained about our arthritis. On my 70th birthday, David and Jessica threw me a party at the Heritage Hills Community Center. All my worlds collided. My library colleagues, my Heritage Hills friends, my book club, my watercolor class, even Patricia and Carol Bennett, my attorneys who'd become friends. There was a moment during the party when I stood back and watched everyone mingling. Emma was sitting on Ruth's lap, laughing at something Betty was showing her on her phone. David and Dorothy were deep in conversation about gardening. Jessica and Patricia were looking at photos on someone's phone, heads bent together. This was my life. Messy and imperfect, and more beautiful than I could have imagined during those dark days of listening to my son plot against me. Penny for your thoughts, Carol said, coming to stand beside me. I'm just thinking about how different things are now, I said. 2 years ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just beginning. You did that, Carol said firmly. You protected yourself when you needed protecting. You forgave when you were ready to forgive. You built this life with intention and courage. Be proud of that. I was proud. Not of the pain, not of the betrayal, but of how I'd responded to it. I'd been tested in the worst possible way, and I'd passed. As the party wound down and people started to leave, David pulled me aside. Mom, Jessica and I have something for you. They handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $40,000. David, no. We talked about this. You don't need to. It's not about need, David interrupted. It's about what's right. We took 5 years to save it, but we wanted to pay you back what we owed. Not because of guilt or obligation, but because you deserved it from the beginning. Jessica added, we also want you to know that we've updated our will. If anything happens to both of us, Emma goes to you first. Not to my parents, not to anyone else. You. Because we trust you with the most important thing in our lives. I couldn't speak. I just hugged them both while tears ran down my face. That night, alone in my condo with Shadow, I looked at the check. $40,000. Money that once would have meant security, would have meant I mattered. Now it was just paper. Nice to have, certainly. But not what mattered. What mattered was the trust. The respect. The acknowledgement that I was valuable for who I was, not what I had. I deposited the check and immediately set up a trust fund for Emma. She'd get it when she turned 25, enough to help her start her life, but not so much that she'd never learn to work for what she wanted. And I kept a portion for myself, not for safety or security, but for joy. I booked a trip to Italy, something Thomas and I had always planned but never done. I bought a really good espresso machine. I took ballroom dancing lessons because why not? At 70 years old, I was finally spending money on myself without guilt, without the fear that I needed to save it for someone else's future. 3 years after the baby monitor incident, I ran into Mr. Chambers, David and Jessica's former attorney, at a charity gala the library was hosting. He recognized me immediately. Mrs. Foster, he said with professional courtesy. How are you? Thriving, actually, I replied. And you? Well, thank you. I have to say, I think about your case sometimes. It was unusual. How so? Most of the time, when adult children pursue guardianship, they succeed. The parents are either actually impaired, or they're not prepared to fight back. You were different. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you weren't going to be victimized. I had good help, I said. You had good instincts. And strength. That meeting in my office, you didn't waver once. I knew then that David and Jessica didn't have a case. He paused. I heard they reconciled with you. That's rare too. People can change, I said. If they want to. Not everyone does, he replied. You were lucky. Or maybe they were lucky that you gave them the chance. After he walked away, I thought about his words. Lucky. Maybe. But it was more than luck. It was choice. Every day, I chose to remain open to relationship while maintaining boundaries. Every day, David and Jessica chose to be better than they'd been. Every day, we all chose connection over convenience. The hidden camera had shown me the truth. But what I did with that truth was my choice. I could have let it destroy me. I could have let bitterness and anger consume me. I could have cut off all contact and spent my remaining years nursing my wounds. Instead, I chose differently. I chose to protect myself while remaining open to redemption. I chose to set boundaries while offering grace. I chose to demand respect while showing compassion. And in choosing those things, I'd gotten my son back. Not the son I thought I had, but the real one, flawed and human and trying his best. And I'd gained a daughter-in-law who was learning, slowly, what family actually meant. And I'd found a community that valued me for who I was. Most importantly, I'd found myself. The Margaret who didn't need to please everyone. Who didn't need to buy love or earn her place. Who was enough just as she was. The baby monitor, that $300 device I'd bought with such innocent intentions, had cost me everything I thought I had. And in losing everything, I'd gained the one thing I'd been missing all along. Myself. I'm Margaret Foster. I'm 71 years old. And this is my story of how a hidden camera destroyed my family and saved my life. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible, ever felt like a burden, ever been treated like an asset instead of a person, I want you to know something. You are worth more than your utility. You are worth more than what you can give. You are worth more than someone else's plans for your life. And it's never too late to start over. Not at 68. Not at 71. Not at 88. Not ever. Take it from someone who planted a camera and uprooted her whole life because of what she heard. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best transformations. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is learn to whisper, no more, and mean it. Where are you listening from? Have you ever discovered a painful truth that changed your life? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Your support means everything.